All right, welcome to Market Pros. My guest today is Bodhi. First of all, how are you doing today, Bodhi?
Doing really well, man. Thanks for asking.
Good, good. We're here to talk about the composite man, psychology and secrets, basically how the whales approach the market. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. How long have you been in the markets?
So I've always been interested in just buying money making assets for all my life. I've always been pretty frugal and interested. I went to a financial class when I was like 13. Nobody really prompted me to do it, but I started looking at seriously investing into crypto in close to the late of 2017, and accumulated my first Bitcoin about halfway up to the run up of at the end of 2017.
Nice, nice, yeah. Uh, well, that's so. How long have you been in specifically NFTs?
Just about a few years, just under 2 years. Starting with Axie, it was one of the not the first because it's been around for quite a while, but I was around maybe like the 10, 15,000th, somewhere in there person
Gotcha,
to join Axie.
gotcha. And then you moved on from there to Star Atlas and the ship market.
I actually went to quite a lot of different projects. So when I first got into Axie, I went into Axie and a couple other different altcoins. So I was looking to diversify out of Bitcoin, get some exposure into some alts. I picked up some ETH and uh, a lot of the popular higher risk altcoins, which was like Polkadot and Cardano at the time. And that's when I found Axie. And then I got a really, really good just feeling, and just I felt like I had a good insight into Axie, being a gamer, and just felt like I really knew what I was doing over there in that space. So I ended up pivoting into play to earn gaming, and then pretty much exited all of my other positions on Bitcoin and everything else, just because I really felt like I had the play to earn gaming was my niche. So yeah, I was in Axie and a couple others, but for the most part, I took profits from Axie and went into many other different ones, like Sandbox and Alluvium and Star Atlas. And then once Star Atlas really started looking good, I pretty much sold all of those, everything else, and put it into Star Atlas, minus a few hedges.
Gotcha, gotcha. So what all markets do you trade? Is it specifically crypto or specifically NFTs, or do you trade stocks and commodities and all that?
Well, I really want to get involved in other things like real estate and commodities, but it's really hard for me to just leave pretty much Star Atlas. Like, all my capital is wrapped up into like the things that I believe in the most, which is Star Atlas pretty much. So I don't really like, it's kind of like, if I were to get into whatever I would get into, it would have to have no expense. That's kind of why I want to get into um, maybe some real estate or something like that, because I feel like I could do um, I feel like I could do some things without actually any capital expense. But for the most part, I just think that crypto's I don't know, it just is kind of the right balance between like being high performance and not being too much work, I feel like.
Yeah, that's for sure. So a- as we know, you're a whale. I mean, you can move markets. I mean, some markets probably more than others. But so what I want to ask you is what markets would be the easiest for a whale to be profitable?
Um,
Like
well,
like more than
so
you like more than usual. You know what I mean? Like what market would it be easy for a whale to basically take money from retail with the least resistance?
I would say like market making, or like minting. So like anytime, like things like arbitrage, where you know that you can buy it over here and sell it over there, like, and it's already kind of like set up. I mean, you see that sometimes with NFTs, like on OpenSea, for example, you'll have a bid to buy an NFT at 1 Ethereum, and the person will be selling it at zero point 0.8, and they won't even realize, but like you can just literally buy it, and then it'll come with the bid, and then you sell it for the 1 ETH. Like that's literally happened before, where it's just set up. It's just right there for the taking, and that exists. Like that's I've made a pretty significant amount of money when you have that liquidity to take advantage of the opportunity. Those exist sometimes. So I would say that that's one of those things. It's just like an arbitrage that's already set up. I mean, you see that big scale with countries. Like some people will literally like travel to a country, buy a bunch of Bitcoin at a different price, and then literally like sell it, try and wire the money out of the country, go
Yeah.
back home, do the opposite thing, and keep literally going back and forth around the world physically. I mean, that's even sometimes a thing, but that's how like Sam Bankman, like Sam, he made his money. Or he made a lot of money like that.
It's
But
like it's like when Coca-Cola uh like they raised the price of a Coke by a penny. You know what I mean? Now on a small scale that wouldn't mean nothing, but when you're selling millions and millions and millions of Coca-Colas, you know what I mean? Kind of like what you're saying, like when you have you'll make a lot of money doing it that way. Now when retail tries to do that, I mean they're only going to deal with like, let's say 1 Bitcoin, 2 Bitcoin, but when you're a whale, you're dealing with 100, or you know what I mean, at least 20 to 100 or even 1,000, just depending on how early you got in. So yeah, I mean, I get the whole arbitrage thing. It's definitely something that's specific to whales.
yeah, exactly. Like kind of moving a little bit more towards, like the types of opportunities that are kind of, you know, that have a little bit of overlap between like whales and retail would be, like minting. Like if you're a whale, I would say Ethereum. Like if you're a whale, that was going to be the other one thing I was going to say was like minting on Ethereum is pretty sweet because you can play the gas wars on Ethereum or any other chain, but particularly Ethereum because just most people, like for example when I got into cyberkongs, I was paying the same price that everybody else was paying to get cyberkongs, but everybody else who got cyberkongs was pretty wealthy, right? So we were all pretty much paying, I think it was like $1,000 per Kong just in the gas when the Kong itself was supposed to be like, I don't know, $100 or something. It was pretty much entirely gas costs. But we set the price of the NFT more so in the price that we paid for gas. And like, people who didn't have that amount of liquidity just didn't really get involved. Even though the mint was 10x cheaper, like we still, certain people who were willing to pay that higher price, which, I didn't get very many. I only got like 10 of those things. Some people got a lot of them. Because you can also, learn how to like mint directly and, create infrastructure using like, hardware that can, mint things really quickly. That's kind of like some next level stuff, but those are the types of things like minting on Ethereum based like smart contract work, like gas wars, things like that, arbitrage. Yeah, those definitely. But then yeah, when you start getting into like closer to retail, I would say like things that are more applicable to like many of the listeners, the audience would be like minting NFTs, smaller projects on Ethereum or BNC because it's a little cheaper, or Polygon like Matic or Solana. You know what I mean? Like just minting, and you don't even really have to a lot of times if you're just you can spend, if you're on like Solana for example, you can pretty much mint near every project even if it's not that fundamentally great, and you might get one of the rare assets in that collection. and it just might be worth like significantly more. It's kind of almost like playing a lottery, but at the same time, you've
Yeah.
got a lot of things going on in your favor, right? Like not only can you get that rare one, but this could also be a really good collection. So even if you don't get a rare one, you might still be able to turn it to a win. Like, you know, there's just, you know, things that you can do to kind of take part in that same type of space, but with like less risk, you know, than spending a bunch on gas.
Yeah. I gotcha. Um, so next is how do you feel about retail's psychology? Like, what are some differences in whale psychology compared to retail's? How are the two groups different besides, obviously capital? How because you've been retail before and now you're a whale. So what is your difference in your psychology approaching the market uh, as a retail investor as opposed to now that you're a whale investor? Like how do you approach the market different psychologically?
I would say the most noticeable difference is how I perceive drops and pumps in the price. So like when in 2017 I bought my first Bitcoin, and it went from, you know, $10,000, which is when I had kind of finished buying it, or like it was like my average price, or roughly around there, and it shot up to 20 really really quickly. And I thought I was the smartest person in the whole world, and I thought everybody else was not as smart as I was, you know. And it was really funny looking back at like such a, you know, you know, nowadays it's, you know, pretty insignificant. It's $10,000, you know, it's nothing to scoff at in a couple months, but
Yeah.
I just find it funny how much that amount of money and how much it inflated in my head, you know. and and now how like I just could care less, you know. Like it actually is kind of disappointing sometimes when the price goes up, because I'm like, dang, I was still buying, you know what I mean? Like now, and I just have this totally different perspective on it. You know, like I believe, you know, I held on to my Bitcoin at 20K. I didn't sell it. I held all the way down, and I started accumulating again when it was down. And I feel like now I actually, you know, I'm kind of more in that line of like one Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Like I don't really want a bunch of money in cars and stuff like that. I want to be in the 1 in a million Bitcoin club, right? Like 21
Mm.
Bitcoin and an ETH stake. Like that's like those are my
Yeah.
financial like life goals. Is just like those, I don't know, like those almost like Bitcoin maxi type goals, right? So yeah, like I don't really see the I see the value in it completely differently. Like I don't really care. Like I said, like I almost prefer a drop, and I kind of am almost like, dang, like when I was getting into Star Atlas, every single time that I heard somebody talking about it, I was like, no, because I wanted it to stay a secret for a little longer, you know. And that, yeah, and you know, I just have a totally different mentality about it now.
So you think
I feel like I know. I feel like I know better now where it's going than I did before, and
so
I actually trust it.
so you think like before it was more about the money in the short term and now it's more about like the fundamentals and the long term because you understand it more and you respect the opportunity more.
Absolutely, yeah, totally. Respect is a great word, and like, you know, like I want to support it, you know what I mean? And like it's not so much about me. I mean, like I definitely want to be like financially sound, but now that I'm
Yeah.
kind of looking at it already, I'm like, man, like, you know, how can other people get
The
involved? That's why I really
community.
like metaverse, because
Yeah.
I feel like it can bring a lot of people on that have no means of like investing, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um but yeah, I definitely feel like this whole like slow is fast type mentality is really like come. But I've noticed that too. Maybe that comes with my age too, because I've also noticed a correlation where I'm like a lot less. I mean, despite being all in Star Atlas, it might not seem this way, but I'm pretty like risk adverse in my life now, more so than I was just a few years ago too. So I don't know. It could just be me like growing up, you know. But
Yeah.
I think, you know, I did notice that, you know, I kept taking these bigger and bigger hits, and it started to kind of make me realize, and also another thing was I noticed that these bigger opportunity costs were happening where I was like, man, if I would have done that, I would have made this much money. And then like just a few weeks later, I said the same thing about this new thing that happened. I'm like, wait a second, like these opportunities are going to keep coming. So I started like, I just started viewing things differently. I just started like being more proactive, being more like thinking forward instead of, just like where I was at or sometimes just, yeah, I guess just trying to be like, I guess I just naturally became more like grounded in the experience and, um, yeah, just like kind of feeling like it's just, I guess I'm more a part of it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the Bitcoin standard, I guess. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it seems like your difference in your financial position definitely changed your perspective of, you know, taking risks, because when you're early on, when you're retail, you want to take those risks because you're trying to build the wealth. At your point now, it seems like you're trying to hold on to your wealth. You know what I mean? And for the long term, you don't. Is that about
Yeah,
right?
and it was funny. Well, and it's funny that you say that because, like, I remember I had some things that I bought. Like, I'd buy some Bitcoin and I'd buy this electric bike, and I was like, man, I should just sell that electric bike and buy Bitcoin because Bitcoin's at 30,000. I know it's going to go up, and it did. Is like over a year ago, kind of when I was investing in play to earn, and I was like, I should invest this in this play to earn, which I totally should have. But it's funny because like I've always kind of been a little I've always had that hesitation. Like Star Atlas is really the first time where I really like I knew I was like, okay, this is the time when like I'm not gonna like be conservative. You know what I mean? And I mean I was, but
Take the
relatively
risk.
speaking, I took a way bigger risk than on Star Atlas than I did on anything else. And I'm really happy with that because I felt like it was kind of like, a lot of my past experiences were kind of like lessons, and Star Atlas was this big test to me. And yeah, I mean, I played really hard. I played Star Atlas. So I'm kind of excited for this interview because, like a lot of the stuff, the questions that you sent me pertain to, kind of like I hate to use the word manipulating markets, but at the same time, like, I played Star Atlas really hard. So it was pretty cool to see like kind of my knowledge and how it came together. And yeah, like Star Atlas was a big part of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you when you're a whale, you got to make money different because, and it's like the rules are different because, you can move the market. So it's not like you can just, buy and make your good trades, swing trades or something, because like you'll swing the whole market and then like you're going to be, you know what I mean, stuck without your trade. So then you just,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like your trade just
Yeah.
passes, trade passes you
I've
by
like,
because you done moved the market up or down.
yeah, I remember I accidentally one time when Atlas, there wasn't a lot of it in circulation, and I was, my buys and sells were doing some pretty significant things to the price. I was one time I sold when I meant to buy or vice versa, and I ended up having to just immediately flip and go back the other direction, and it was pretty insane how much of a loss that was, just a couple swaps back and forth. It was like, I don't know, like it was like 5% or something. I was like, ooh, it's just pretty crazy to see like just what that movement can do, especially if you're not like calculated on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you still learn new lessons, with your difference in capital. Um, so what kind of mistakes, like looking back on your psychology then, like as a retail investor, what kind of mistakes did you make, look approaching the market from a psychological perspective?
I would say I would say number one, it would be uh, I guess fundamentally, I would say that there's a couple things. It would be, um, hodling onto good projects. Like if you're supposed to be buying the dips, right? So if you're into, I mean, it's definitely good to take profits, but at the same time, like you have to have like a really long term outlook on these things. Like we're really really early, even in all of crypto, like Bitcoin and stuff. Like you have to be willing to really hold long term, and um, you can't be like you just
Scared.
have to anticipate. Yeah, you have to anticipate the volatility. You have to anticipate the worst case. You have like, like I'm literally like looking at buying some Bitcoin just in case. Like, I mean, like I feel pretty well hedged. I've got a couple gallon nodes, and then one of the largest accounts in Star Atlas. So I feel pretty confident where things are going. But at the same time, like I want to at least have zero point 0.1 Bitcoin, like just in
Yeah.
case. Just in quick, who knows, man? I mean,
It's like
we could
digital
go
gold.
back to yeah, exactly. So like I'm trying to look at, okay, like what if like play to earn gaming fails, which is so unrealistic. Like I want to at least have a little something. So like I just always trying to be prepared for everything, and but I'm also like I'm also want to be prepared for like Star Atlas to succeed, you know what I mean? So I would say just like personally, I try to like find a real like just a really good balance. And I think that play to earn gaming is like super, and crypto is like super important. So like I think that for most people the balance is way further onto the crypto side. Like they need to go way more into crypto because most people just in the world aren't into it at all, which is not that's not balanced. But then at the same time, like you just have to find balance in everything. Like I feel like I'm kind of a little teeny bit overexposed to Star Atlas just because I have zero Bitcoin and zero Solana and zero Ethereum. You know what I mean? Like I should have at least 20K or something like that in there. You know what I mean?
So
Like a 0.5% or 1%. Like that's just a no brainer. You know what I mean?
yeah. So are you saying retail can get scared out of their positions because they're too overly invested into one thing, and if they were, more diversified, they would be able to hold through the volatility of certain assets? Is that about right?
Yeah, I think it's just like it's just I think a lot of it just comes down to like just understanding the environment that you're in. Like right now, for example, we're in this very teeter totter spot where we could go down for a very long time, like really far. We could go sideways, we could go up. We're in this very middle ground. We're not at an extremely low point, we're not at an extremely high point. So it's just important to understand that and to like place your bets accordingly. Like are you young? Okay, like for me, I'm young, so I'm willing to take a little bit more bets on Star Atlas, and I have to be willing to hold those. If we go into a downtrend for a few years, I'm prepared for that. You know what I mean? Like it's just important to like anticipate things, and to have many different contingency plans. And I think like that way, no matter what happens, you can always kind of like find yourself in one of the things that you planned. Like I remember one time I bought a bunch of Atlas, and I knew that if the price continued to go down, there was a bunch of ships still for sale in Atlas. I just told myself I'm just going to sweep all the ships, raise the price of the ships, and preserve the loss. And I was able to, and that's what happened. Worst case thing happened. The price tanked. I lost a ton, and I was able to take a pretty significant loss, turn into it. And I know that's like most people can't do that, but at the same, my point is that I had a backup plan, and then literally it went down my worst case scenario, and I did exactly what I anticipated, and it ended up being a really good thing that it happened. Um, so just like I just encourage people to have a plan and stick to it, and think long term. You know what I mean? And think about all things. Like are if we go into a bear market, are you going to be able to continue to dollar cost average in until we come back out of it? I think it's just looking at things in a really holistic sense instead of just being really short-sighted and narrow-minded. I think that's just like the main thing that people kind of I guess that's the main thing I'm trying to convey here.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I feel like retail has a very short time perspective. You know what I mean? And when you're like we were saying earlier, like, retail is worried about the quick money, and they're easily scared out of their positions because they don't have a long-term time horizon. You know what I mean? And plus, you've learned a lot by the time you became a whale. There's a reason why you've accumulated what you have. You know what I mean? So obviously you learned those lessons, and I think that's very important for to broaden your time perspective and learn the lessons as you go so that you can accumulate wealth. You know what I mean? And then when you get there, it's a whole different rule set. You know what I mean? What uh what
Just
mistakes?
one thing I wanted to add real quick is I think one thing that really helped me is I never really put a lot of emphasis on like money or material things to begin with. So it wasn't very hard for me to like value these economies and these communities a lot more because it's just it's pretty easy for me to like just not have I guess most people are concerned with those short term things. Like I'm not really that concerned to begin with those things, so it wasn't very hard for me to like see the value in being early on something and taking risks. You know what I mean? And then if it doesn't work out, I'll just go back to what I was doing before. Like I'm fine with that. You know.
Gotcha. Um, what so what mistakes does retail make when they are competing in a market that is predominantly traded by whales? What I mean is like, so like the Bitcoin market, obviously retail isn't going to move that market because there's a lot of very early investors in Bitcoin that have, you know, thousands of Bitcoin, hundreds of Bitcoin, whatever, and they can move the market. So what mistakes do retail make when they're thinking about, what the whales are going to do, or, you know,
I
yeah,
think
like,
I think what it is they think that they are um in like it in the not in positive ways but in negative ways. They think that they can act the same way, and then they also, and in the on the flip side of the coin, in a negative way, they also, because we're just talking about mistakes, right? um they also think that they can't act the same way. And so I'll explain. Like people think, oh, I can't, um, you know, I can't make a profit because I don't have enough money to make a profit. And it's like, so that's that's one of those two. And then the other one is people think, you know, like if I just leverage up, then I
yeah,
will have the same
leverage.
amount of weight. I'll have the same amount of weight as a whale, and I can pretty much fake being the composite man until I make it. You know what I mean? Um, so
That
they're
doesn't
like,
work.
you know, they'll like, I'll use my 100x leverage or my 50x leverage to break this resistance. And I'll turn my $5,000 position into a $500,000 position, and I'll break this resistance. And then they think, but what they don't know is that they can't back that up. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like normally a composite man would be doing that exact same thing,
and then you get
but
wicked
with
out.
like 2x. They do it with 2x or
Yeah,
5x. You know what I mean? Like they do that, but they also, it's like they're totally willing to either one, back that up, or totally take a loss on that. You know what I mean? They have like their friends that are helping them. You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
like, so they make the mistake into thinking that they can do the same thing, or they make the mistake into thinking that they just don't even try because they think they can't do anything. So I would say, the main mistake is just like kind of, you got to know your strength. You got to know that if like play to your strength. If you're not able to move the market like that, then your strength has to be, I mean, actually, you just have to pretty much, play within those margins. But the one thing I wanted to add was, uh, shoot, I forgot what I was going to say.
well, and another thing that retail needs to realize is that whales used to be retail. So the whale knows how retail thinks, but retail has never been a whale. You know what I mean? So they got to anticipate that, like that if something is obvious, the whales know that it's obvious to retail. So that's when you get these crazy wicks that came out of nowhere, and you're like, hold on, my technical said one thing, but then this crazy wick happened, and then it did exactly what I thought it was going to do in the first place. You know what I mean? And that's the composite.
Right.
That's the composite man right there. Um,
Right.
uh, so how can retail improve? Basically, what we were just talking about. But how can they
That
improve?
was the thing I was gonna say.
Okay.
Yeah, that helps remind me. So, think in terms of percentages. So, like, I still do this. I don't look at things in terms of dollar amounts. Some things I do, but a lot of times I look at things in terms of percentages. So, like, make sure that if you're learning, don't lose more than 1%. Like, don't have the ability to lose more than 1%, right? Like, and I feel the same way. I'm still learning how to leverage trade, so I'm still in that exact same boat. Like, I'm not going to be willing to lose more than 1% on any given trade. And sometimes I do lose 1% on a trade and it stings, you know what I mean? But like, I definitely like just, I'm not going to put, even if I think like, oh my gosh, this is a great opportunity, I want to lever up and I want to, go ahead and put, 5-10% of my portfolio at risk in this trade, which is a pretty big deal, for anyone.
Yeah.
Just understand that like that's a big deal for anyone. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to lever up to 50% just to like no that's just not how you do it. So like just think in terms of percentages. If you make 10%, that is amazing, no matter who you are. Like I see that a lot when people come into Star Atlas and they're like, oh, 60% on chips. Like, yeah, that's great for a whale, but not for us. I'm like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, that is
Like,
incredible.
no matter who you are. I mean, like maybe if like, I mean, I don't know. There's just no excuse. It just makes no sense to me. So yeah, like just think in terms of percentages and know that 12% is just as good for anybody, no matter who you are. Like as long as you're outperforming traditional economies, like you're in the good boat.
Yeah, and it's all about risk to reward ratio as well. Like like you were saying, 1%. So that means you could be wrong, 50 times. And if your risk to reward ratio is 1 to 2, you're still going to make 50%, you know? So, uh, yeah, you'll still make 50% profit. Um, so yeah, it's all about your risk to reward ratio. And like you said, don't risk more than 1% per trade. That's literally how I uh, know how much I'm going to trade because I trade 1% of that account, not even my total wealth. It's
Yeah.
1% of that account, you know? So that means I can make 100 trades. If I'm wrong half the time and my risk to reward ratio is right, usually my risk to reward ratio is like at least 1 to 3, most of the time 1 to 5, and that's good. I mean, you can be wrong more than half the time, and as long as your risk to reward ratios is good and risk management is good, you know, you'll make money in the end.
Yeah, it's just about like surviving pretty much. Like I
Exactly.
said, as long as you're performing traditional economies, like it's all good.
Hmm.
Because like money is all relative, right? Like you don't really have to make a ton of it. You literally just have to make more than what it costs you to live. So just make sure that you're setting yourself up to where you're just in a better place tomorrow than you are today. And if you do take a loss, it's not something that you can't just hop back from. You know what I mean? And just because you don't have a lot doesn't mean you can't just keep taking those steps forward. Like if anything, the bigger you get, the slower that you want to go. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so like that's what I'm saying by like play to your strengths. Like if you're not that big of a player, then play to your strength, grind 8 hours a day, hit every single one of those mints, like get in early, stay up till 3 a.m. and put your $20 on this mint and see if it hits. You know what I mean? If that's like, because literally no whale is going to be doing that. So like that's your strength. That's kind of like the game you got to play. And yeah, just try not to be short-sighted and try not to like jump ahead. Like you got to understand, you got to take these really small steps, and then like you'll and start to calibrate, like start to see what works and what doesn't, because you'll start to know like for example, leverage trading, I just would always get wrecked leverage trading. But every single time that I bought any NFTs and traded NFTs, I would make a ton of money and I would make up for all those losses. So I was like, okay, I just deleted all my leverage trading accounts. The moment that I would re-download them, I'd just get wrecked and then I delete them again. And I just haven't leverage traded for like a long time, and that served me really well. So like
Yeah.
kind of calibrate along the way and figure out what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and just hold yourself accountable. And yeah, like another thing I'd like to try and do is, if I'm placing a bet in something, I like counter bet in somewhere else. So like,
Hedge.
yeah, I just hedge every little thing. And I've always done that. Like, okay, if I buy this electric bike, then I need to make sure I buy some Bitcoin. Or, okay, if I bought, 100K in Star Atlas, I better go ahead and buy a node for, one of these gallon nodes over here that I can't ever sell for years. Like I'm going to buy that because I know that if I don't, I'm just going to sell. If I don't buy that because I'm not able to sell it, I'm going to buy something else that I am going to be able to sell, which I did. I sold everything that I could. And I'd like, I just like know yourself. Like I knew myself that I was going to go all into Star Atlas. So I bought something that I knew I couldn't take away even if I wanted to. And that's actually served me really well, like that specific trade. So yeah, like get to know your own psychology and start to like play to your own strengths, and then recalibrate what those are constantly over time.
Well, that's about it for today. Bodhi, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank everybody for coming out.
Thanks, my friend. Have a good one.